Hello everyone and welcome back to another mindset coaching video. In this video we're going to be extending on from what we spoke about in our previous episode, which was all about emotional eating. In this video I'm really hoping to dive into some really practical strategies that you guys can use to help overcome some stumbling roadblocks that you're continuing to face in this area. So in our previous video, we did discuss what was emotional eating, why it happens, and how it can interfere with the results that you're seeking. In today's video, I'm going to be sharing with you some strategies you guys can use to actually stop your animalistic brain just for a moment to really pause, think about what you're doing, and then set yourself on a new course of behavior to really be able to change habits. So first of all, let's unpack what actually happens when you're in the moment. So that moment when you're about to overeat, or that you're about to start to binge eat, or you're about to catch yourself before you start to emotional eat, which is any time you're eating when you're not actually hungry. So there's usually a few things going on. One thing is it could be that you're just zoning out. You're completely disregarding what's going on right here, right now. Your brain is somewhere else, and all of a sudden you're finding yourself with food in your hand, then food in your mouth, and then it's gone. And it's only after the fact you're actually waking up and going, oh, I probably didn't need to eat that food. Why did I actually do that? So giving in to these desires isn't necessarily the issue here. So what is the actual issue in giving way to these desires, these triggers? As we've said before in the past, there really is no such thing as good or bad foods. If you want to know more about that, Dee's produced a great video that really unpacks and explores why we need to change our mindset around the way in which we label food. But these desires, unfortunately, are more than that. They're habit, and there is absolutely nothing wrong than having chocolate or a cookie or ice cream if that's really what you feel like. But unfortunately, what we know from working with lots of women is that at the root cause of this issue is the inability to stop, the inability to control how much they're having. And unfortunately, these repeated behaviors are usually those things that are actually stopping them from getting the results. And these same people are there seeking meal plans or rigid rules or restrictions or guidelines to follow, where in actual fact, sometimes just changing really simple habits over the long term can actually end up giving you the results that you seek. So we do find that we end up sliding into these habits really quickly. And these habits, they really do take hold very quick. And sometimes they're very hard to change. So I certainly found when I became pregnant, new habits really started to form quite quickly. And then once I wasn't pregnant, changing those habits really became a lot harder. That's not to say they're impossible, but you do need to give or create space and time that will actually allow you to stop, catch yourself, and then be able to change your habit. Because we end up acting in a way that is actually quite subconscious. We're not even engaging any sort of thought or decision-making process behind it. We're acting automatically, and that can be a really dangerous place to be, because we end up thinking that is just the way I do things, that is the behavior that I default to, and I actually can't stop it. When in actual fact, there is so many things that we do automatically that we can change, but we need to stop ourselves before we actually act on them. So we in fact need to hit the pause button, and that is why I simply love meal planning and coming up with a strategy of how I want to eat each week. It doesn't mean that I'm looking for perfection, and it doesn't mean that I 100% always stay true to course. But it gives me a plan of action, and it allows me to act kind of in that default mode without needing to make as many decisions throughout the week, because I've already done the pre-planning. I've thought about what foods I would like to fuel myself with, and then from there it's then set and forget. But being able to hit the pause button in the moment is actually so much harder. So I'm about to share with you the 5 Ds of how you can actually hit the pause button, engage some decision making, and then therefore be able to shift your habits in the long term. And before I get into these, I want you to think about what is the big picture here. The big picture is that you want to get to a point with your body composition where you can maintain a naturally slim or lean physique, and feel really confident within yourself. without necessarily feeling like you're depriving yourself. But to be able to do that, you need to be actioning a whole bunch of things that person, you, Ange, which is slimmer and leaner, behaviors and actions that would actually help you get there. And those processes need to be automatic, so it just becomes ingrained into your character, into your personality, into the actions and habits that you actually do on every single day, that will then allow you to maintain that body composition for as long as you then initiate another habit or another change along the way. I hope I haven't lost you there. So think about the big picture of what it is that you're really trying to achieve. And I say this all the time with all the women that we work with, is that yes, meal plans work for a certain period of time, and so does tracking calories. You can learn so much from it. But the big picture here is that you just want to get to a point with your weight that you feel great and you feel really healthy and you feel like you've got control over the foods that you're eating. That if you want it, you can have it. But if you don't want it, you can say, no, not for me, and I know exactly when to stop. So let's get into our plan, our strategy, these 5 Ds. So the first one is distract. And this is the first thing you've got to do. That moment before you're about to eat something, when you're not actually physically hungry, you need a moment to actually clear the head and go, stop. What is it that I'm about to actually do here? And I know that that sounds really obvious. Pulling your awareness to the point that you're about to eat when you're not hungry is actually really important. I cannot count the amount of times I've found myself pulling food from Sky's plate that he's not eating and eating it myself, and then I catch myself with the food in my mouth and I'm like, what am I even doing? The food doesn't taste that great and it's just adding extra calories, and I know deep down that that's not going to help me keep and achieve the body composition that I really want. It's going to make me feel really happy, and it's not even food that's giving me that much satisfaction. So I need to take time to actually stop and distract myself from whatever it is that's going on. I need that time to catch that habit and stop it and say consciously, what is it that I'm actually doing? And how is this going to be impacting me in the future? So there's a couple of ways that you can distract yourself. But the first thing you've got to do is, as I said, you've got to really catch yourself, and you've got to become clear of when you are more likely to see those habits occurring, whether it's at night, whether it's when you're feeding your child, or so on. And then I would say, come up with a list of things that you can do instead. So if, say for example, it's my habit of eating Sky's food, I could, as soon as he's finished eating, grab that plate of food, put it in the sink and put water on it, okay? I'm definitely not gonna eat it then. Or I could put the food in the bin. If it's another habit of, say, reaching out for a sweet treat when I'm on the couch, when I'm not hungry, it could be a case of going, you know what, I'm gonna do something that is mentally stimulating that will actually distract me from whatever it is that I was about to do. So think about your higher and your lower level brain. Your lower level brain, your animalistic, your primitive brain, is telling you to act on autopilot, see food, eat food, survive, right? But your higher order brain is there saying, you probably don't want that piece of cake, you're actually not really hungry for it. What is actually going on for you? So in our previous video, I unpacked emotional eating and why it's so important to actually get to the root cause, why you're actually doing these things. So have a couple of things on your list that you can do to actually distract yourself from that behavior. The next one is delay, and this is an important one. It's about setting an actual time of how long you're going to delay that behavior before actually acting on it. So say for example, it's that sweet treat at night. Set your timer for 6 minutes, 7 minutes, make it an odd, unusual number, and actually keep to it and say, I'm not going to have it until the timer's up. And when the timer is up, see and realize that you probably actually never wanted it anyway. And that's a great way to stop yourself, put physical distance of time between you and the behavior you're about to carry out. The next D is distance, and this has everything to do with physical distance. So when I'm at parties where there's maybe a big grazing board, I don't tell myself that I can't have anything. I see what is available. I make a choice based on what I really want, and then I move away from the goddamn thing. And that's the same with cheese platters, on boards, dessert tables. I could be at dinner when there's a huge plate of food and there's extra bread. get up, go to the bathroom, actually create distance between yourself and the food. The other, if you're known for going back for seconds, actually put the food away before you go down and you sit and eat your main meal. That's one thing that I implemented last year, and it had a tremendous impact on how much food, extra food I was having. Because say for example, I made a tray of roast potatoes, super delicious, yummy. I'd serve myself up, and then when I was putting it away, I'd have an extra 1 or 2 potatoes here or there. And I know that that really doesn't seem like a lot in the grand scheme of things, but it's about actually stopping yourself and pulling your attention to those behaviors, because if you do it once, I guarantee you're going to be doing it a hell of a lot more. And so as soon as you start catching yourself on one of those habits, you'll find that it'll become easier and easier to catch yourself with other habits as well. And you'll start to slowly realize that there's possibly a whole bunch of things that you're doing on a very subconscious level that's actually sabotaging the body composition that you're trying for. And again, it's not about counting calories or following some sort of really overly restricted diet. It's just about becoming clever and hyper aware of what you are actually doing. So create distance between yourself and the habit that you're about to carry forward. Could be about keeping chocolate in the freezer, whatever it is that's going to work for you, not keeping it in the house, you name it. The next D is download, and that has to do with actually writing it down. And I find the process of writing down your thought patterns when it comes to food is a great way to get clarity on the thoughts and feelings that are really coming up for you. And if you're finding yourself reaching for food at certain times, it is important that you actually write it down, because as soon as we commit pen to paper, we are making a more binding agreement with ourselves of the thoughts and actions we're actually going to be committing to, and we start to look at it from a more objective viewpoint rather than a subjective viewpoint, which is sometimes caught up with a lot of emotional attachment, like I deserve this food because I've had a hard day, or I'm emotionally tired, I'm exhausted, all these things. So writing it down to paper actually just makes you go, oh, okay, I probably could work through this by just really thinking about it like a thinking, intelligent woman that I actually am. So guys, I hope that those 4 Ds were super, super helpful. And the last D, it is all about decision. And the decision, ultimately, it is yours. And as a coach, I can never stress this enough. No matter how much I want to be there to help you guys and guide you through the process of these things, unless you actually give it a shot yourself, you'll never actually realize the work that needs to happen for you to get to a place where you're getting results, but also fundamentally you're changing some really big things in terms of the way you see and you think about food. So I hope that you found that video really helpful, really practical, and I'm going to be jumping on and doing another video to make this a full 3-part series on emotional eating. Stay tuned for it. I can't wait to share it with you next week.